The astronomer's last star. Dr. Catherine Wells had been studying stars for 40 years when she found the impossible one. It appeared on her screen on a Tuesday evening during a routine observation session. She was alone in the observatory. She preferred the late shifts when the building was quiet and the sky was darkest. The telescope was scanning a region she'd mapped dozens of times before, looking for variables, transients, anything that had changed. And there it was, a star that hadn't been there 3 months ago. Or more accurately, a star that had always been there, but had suddenly become visible. That alone wasn't remarkable. Stars could be occluded by dust clouds, or flare into visibility when conditions changed. But what Catherine saw in the spectrographic data made her stop breathing. The light signature was wrong. All wrong. Stars show us the past. When we look at a star 10 light years away, we see it as it was 10 years ago, because that's how long the light took to reach us. Looking at stars is looking at history, at ancient light that traveled through space to tell us stories of what was. But this star's light was coming from the future. Catherine checked her calculations 3 times, ran the spectrographic analysis again, called in her colleague David from home at midnight to verify she wasn't losing her mind. "That's not possible," David said, staring at the data. "I know. Light can't move backward in time. It can't show us things that haven't happened yet. I know. But the data, I know." They spent the rest of the night analyzing, reanalyzing, checking every variable they could think of. By dawn, they had to accept it. Somehow, impossibly, this star was showing them futures instead of pasts. Catherine looked through the telescope's eyepiece, adding visual observation to the spectroscopic data. The star appeared normal enough, a white point of light, like millions of others. But when she looked at it, really looked with the intensity she brought to observation, something shifted. She saw herself, not as she was now, but as she would be. Lying in a hospital bed, thin and sick, a doctor delivering news she'd feared her whole life. Cancer, stage 3, caught too late because she'd been too busy with work to notice the symptoms. Catherine jerked away from the eyepiece, her heart racing. That was in 6 months. 6 months from now, if the vision was accurate, she'd be diagnosed with cancer that was already too far advanced. She looked again, saw a different future, herself at a conference, presenting research that answered questions she'd been pursuing for decades. Colleagues applauding, the breakthrough she'd worked toward finally achieved. Another look, another future. She was 75, retired, sitting on a porch with a grandchild she didn't have yet, teaching the child about constellations. Each time she looked, the star showed different possible futures. Some wonderful, some terrible, all crystal clear in detail and emotion. Catherine documented everything, wrote detailed notes, captured images, built a catalogue of the futures the star revealed. But with each vision, her anxiety grew. If she saw a terrible future, was she obligated to try preventing it? If she saw a wonderful one, should she steer toward it? How could she know which visions were inevitable and which were merely possible? She saw global futures too, not just personal ones. Wars that might start, climate disasters that could be prevented with action, technological breakthroughs waiting to be discovered if the right person asked the right question. The weight of knowledge became unbearable. Catherine stopped sleeping, stopped eating regularly, just watched the star, documented futures, tried to map probability and inevitability. She saw herself in 3 months, gaunt and hollow-eyed from obsession with the star. Saw that future becoming self-fulfilling as she stopped taking care of herself. David found her in the observatory at 3 a.m. on a Thursday, looking worse than he'd ever seen her. "Dr. Wells, this has to stop. You're destroying yourself." "I can't stop. If I look away, I might miss something important. A warning about something terrible that I could prevent." You can't prevent what hasn't happened. You're watching possibilities and treating them as certainties. But if I can save lives, you can't save hypothetical lives by sacrificing your real one. David gently pulled her away from the telescope. The star shows what might be, not what will be. You're watching possibilities and paralyzing yourself with the burden of all those potential outcomes. Catherine wanted to argue but couldn't find the energy. She was exhausted, hollowed out by too many futures crowding her mind. David helped her home, made her promise to rest, to step away from the star for at least a week. Catherine tried, but the knowledge of what she'd seen haunted her. The cancer diagnosis, 6 months away. Which choices would lead to that future? Which would prevent it? Every decision felt weighted with impossible consequence. On the 5th day, unable to bear it anymore, she returned to the observatory. But instead of looking through the telescope, she sat in the observation room and thought about what the star had shown her. All those futures, the good ones and bad ones, the triumphs and disasters, they all hinged on choices she hadn't made yet. The star wasn't showing her fate. It was showing her possibility. And possibility, by its nature, meant freedom. If multiple futures existed, then nothing was fixed. She could choose. But therein lay the problem. She'd been so focused on trying to choose correctly, trying to navigate toward good futures and away from bad ones, that she'd stopped living in the present at all. Catherine walked outside, looked at the sky with her naked eyes, not through telescopes or cameras. The stars were just stars, beautiful and distant and mysterious. Not fortune tellers, not warnings, just ancient fires burning out their lives in the darkness, indifferent to human observation. She felt something release in her chest. The star didn't control her future. It showed possibilities, but she decided which ones to pursue simply by living, by making choices in each moment based on what mattered to her. She went back inside and took one final look at the impossible star. This time, she didn't see distant futures. She saw the present moment, saw herself standing at the telescope, exhausted and afraid, having sacrificed health and happiness for the illusion of control. The star was showing her that this, right now, was the most important moment. Not 6 months from now, not 3 years from now, now. What she did in this moment would shape what came next, but she couldn't know how, couldn't map it, couldn't control it. She could only choose how to live right now, in this present that was the only time she actually inhabited. Catherine stepped away from the telescope, made an appointment with her doctor for a full checkup, not because the star had shown her cancer, but because taking care of herself mattered regardless of what the future held. Started eating regular meals, started sleeping full nights, started living like someone who trusted that the present mattered more than the future. She published her findings about the star in a careful paper that drew skepticism from the scientific community. Most assumed she'd made an error. A few confirmed her observations, but couldn't replicate the visions of futures. The star showed them only standard light from standard distances. Catherine came to believe the visions were personal. The star showed each observer their own possibilities, not universal truths. It was a mirror, not a window, a reflection of hope and fear made visible. She stopped visiting the star, went back to studying normal celestial objects that obediently showed only their pasts, found peace in unknowing, in accepting that tomorrow was fundamentally mysterious, and that was okay. Better than okay. Necessary. Because if you knew the future, you couldn't truly choose. You could only follow the path you'd seen, paralyzed by knowledge of what was coming. But in uncertainty, there was freedom. In not knowing, there was possibility. In accepting that tomorrow was hidden, there was permission to live today. Catherine dedicated her remaining years to teaching, never mentioned the star to her students. Instead, taught them to look at the sky with wonder rather than anxiety, to see beauty without needing to predict or control it. She got married at 53 to a kind man who made her laugh, had no children but found joy in mentoring students, did good work without needing it to be breakthrough work, lived deliberately, present in each moment instead of constantly calculating future consequences. She died at 72, peacefully, never knowing exactly when death would come until it was there. And that not knowing had been a gift. It let her live fully until the end, without countdown, without dread, without the burden of seeing her end approach. The impossible star remained visible to other astronomers who looked for it. Some claimed to see futures, others saw nothing special. Those who saw visions either learned Catherine's lesson to look away and live in the present, or they didn't, and they lost themselves in the infinite branching paths of possibility. Catherine's final paper, published posthumously, was brief. I discovered a star that showed possible futures. This paper is not about that star. It's about what I learned from it, that the future is meant to be unknown, that uncertainty is freedom, that the most important moment is always this one, right now. The universe shows us what we need to see. For most astronomers, that's the past. History written in starlight reaching us from ancient sources. For a few, it's the future. A reminder that what's coming is less important than what we do in this moment. My advice to anyone who finds themselves able to see what might be: look away, close your eyes, ground yourself in what is, because the only time we can actually live is now, and spending now obsessed with then, whether past or future, is the real tragedy. The stars will continue burning whether or not we watch them, whether or not we understand them. Our task is not to know everything, but to live well with what we know, and gracefully with what we don't. Her students read those words and understood. She'd looked into the future and chosen the present. She'd seen what might be and decided that was less important than what was. And in that choice, she'd found more wisdom than any star, impossible or not, could show. The astronomy community largely dismissed her work on the future-showing star. But a few, those who'd experienced their own impossible observations, their own moments of seeing too much, understood. They visited the star occasionally, looked through their telescopes with appropriate caution, saw glimpses of their own possible futures, and then they followed Catherine's example. They looked away, returned to living in the present, made choices based on what mattered now rather than what might matter later. The star continued its work, showing futures to those brave or curious enough to look, a mirror for possibility, a reminder that tomorrow is always uncertain, and that uncertainty is not a bug, but a feature of existence. Because if we knew everything that was coming, we'd never be surprised by joy, never experience the pleasure of the unexpected, never have to be brave, because we'd know which choices were safe. Living means not knowing, means making choices with incomplete information, means trusting that you'll handle what comes, even though you can't see it approaching. Catherine Wells had learned that lesson by looking at an impossible star. But the lesson was available to anyone willing to notice it. The future exists in potential, not in certainty. And the greatest gift is not knowing what comes next. It's the freedom to live in this moment, fully present, making choices based on what matters now rather than what might matter later. The last star shone on, teaching its lesson to anyone who looked and then looked away. The real astronomy was not in distant fires, but in learning to live under their light, grateful for illumination, at peace with mystery, brave enough to walk forward into an unknowable tomorrow.